as is the Bible, almost entirely bogus if you're going to take it as a text to live by. It is taboo to say that. You could not possibly get elected in this country if you even openly doubted whether or not there was a creator God.
We have a new airline where the pilots are just going to rely on prayer to land the planes. Tickets will be cheap, and you can sign up. Who's going to sign up for that airline?
Sam fucking Harris. We're back with more Sam Harris most savage comebacks. Please click like and subscribe below, and then I'm gonna hit play right now.
I write books about what's going on in the Muslim world because I have an expertise in what's going on in the Muslim world. I actually travel through the Muslim world. I study the Muslim world. I understand the conversations that are taking place. And so I feel like, in a sense, I'm in a better position to sort of make judgments about what sort of socio or religious or political developments are taking place within this people of 1.5 billion number. Statements like there are millions of Muslims who have this sort of death cult are profoundly inaccurate and are based on nothing except your sort of general impression of a region and of a religion that you have a very surface understanding of.
Well, it's not. For instance, in the End of Faith, I cite these Pew polls that were done in 9 Muslim countries, actually not the most radicalized. And the most radicalized countries wouldn't let the polling be done. But even in Turkey, the Muslim success story on many fronts, the level of support for suicide bombing against non-combatants in defense of the faith was shocking. I mean, you just run the numbers. When 77% of people in Lebanon say that it is justified, that's, it's not a minority. It's not even close to a minority. Even if it were only 5% of the Muslim world that was radicalized by my lights, that is still a problem we have to talk about soberly. I mean, we're talking about 75 million people.
Certainly, and I don't think anybody would say that that's not a conversation that we need to talk about. But
it's a civilizational problem that is not amenable to simply saying that Islam is a religion of peace.
I don't understand what Islamic civilization means. I mean, I'm
talking about this global civilization.
Oh, I see. I think, look, you
have to keep putting pressure on bad ideas, because that's the thing about bad ideas. They don't respond well to pressure. People have internal contradictions in their lives that they can notice because they're do you think prayer works? Many people say yes, absolutely, I think prayer works, and then you say, okay, well, we have a new airline where the pilots are just going to rely on prayer to land the planes. Tickets will be cheap, and you can sign up. Who's going to sign up for that airline? If the pilot comes over the PA system and tells you that he's convinced that prayer is all he needs to land this plane, you're just going to see just stark terror on the faces of even the most religious people, and so that's a contradiction that can be pointed out. And we have to do that 1,000-fold and just keep doing it. But as you say, global warming, evolution, these are the jury's not out on questions, and many people just don't subscribe, and it's a failure of conversation ultimately.
The ancient philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote in his Pensées, "The heart has reason in which reason does not know. We know this in countless ways." What would you say to people who try to lead a good and just life by through their religion and by following what is in their hearts, rather than following the literal sayings of the Bible and following reasoning?
Yeah, well, I certainly don't mean to diminish experience that has nothing to do with coming to a rational understanding of the way the world works. I mean, much of our experience is not a matter of reason. It's not a matter of belief even, and some of the most important aspects of our experience aren't. So experiencing love and devotion and awe, I mean, these are features of our subjectivity that I think are extraordinarily valuable. The important thing to recognize is that
if you think the only real container, the only viable container for those experiences is your denominational church, is the language of your ancestors, if you're still committed to being a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, I think you are tacitly supporting the religious divisions in our world. I mean, you are giving cover, I think, quite explicitly to all of the people who take their holy books far more seriously. I mean, I can't tell you how much time I and other people have spent having to fight the battle against the liberals and moderate Christians and Jews and Muslims who will insist upon the viability of these denominations and of raising their children to think that they're Christians and Muslims and Jews, and who will never admit that any of the extremist behavior going on in the name of their faith has anything to do with religion. And so there's no question in my mind that it provides a kind of friction in our discourse where we really can't call a spade and say, okay, this is much of the Bible and the Quran is just life-destroying gibberish, and we just have to acknowledge this and cease to take these books seriously.
It's perfectly clear to me that my style of conversation is not what can be broadcast to the Muslim world to change people's minds. I mean, that is your job. You are much better suited for that job. And I would agree with you that in order to empower the moderates of the Muslim world, drawing cartoons of the Prophet and writing paragraphs of the sort I've written is not a strategy. I'm not a diplomat. And I don't know, but what's troubling me is I don't know where the line is between encouraging moderation, representing what Islam could be. Islam could be a religion of peace, perhaps. Jihad could be just an inner spiritual struggle and have nothing to do with holy war. Indeed, that we have to raise a generation of Muslims who believe those things. But pretending that it is already is problematic, because it isn't for so many millions of Muslims. And it may be that if you pretend hard enough, in fact, you become what you pretend to be, and maybe that's part of the process. But I think we have to admit to ourselves that we are confronting the behavior of a death cult among millions and millions of Muslims, not 10,000 who went to training camps in Afghanistan. We are confronting an endorsement of this kind of behavior and a reflexive political solidarity where Muslims side with other Muslims, no matter how sociopathic their behavior, simply because they're other Muslims. We can't deny the problem while trying to encourage a more benign face of the religion.
I think that the issue of belief is that
Interesting.
I don't see religious belief as distinct from any other kinds of beliefs. I mean, we represent the world in our thoughts, and all of us are in the business of hoping that our representations are accurate, or at least accurate enough so that we can successfully negotiate our lives happily. I mean, nobody...
That's a big point right there. We hope they're accurate, or at least accurate enough so that we can operate the world and be able to predict what would happen for us. See, that's a huge difference. That's a huge difference. I know, and this is commentary from the Jordan Peterson perspective, he would say that, we're finite beings. And so our beliefs don't operate in the realm of perfect materialistic truth. They operate in a realm of approximation, and that these approximations can be represented in ways that aren't necessarily materially true, but are symbolically true, a different kind of truth. But that's a topic for another time. So let's keep going.
Nobody wants to be mistaken, profoundly mistaken about their place in the world, or about what happens after death, or where their loved ones go after. I mean, we're not in the business of deceiving ourselves just willfully, and so religious beliefs are on all fours with all of our other beliefs. We are describing the world. We're trading in these descriptions through language. Someone says to you, well, do you realize that Jesus is your personal Savior, and nobody, He's the way and the truth and the life, and nobody gets to heaven but through Him? That is a description of the way this universe is organized in moral terms and in spiritual terms, and it's either right or wrong, and it purports to be right. And it promises terrible consequences to those who don't accept it. Now, this is a very strange scheme, I think, to believe in. I'm not the first person to point out that it's a very strange sort of loving God who would have salvation depend on a person's ability to believe in Him for bad reasons. I mean, it's a weird scenario, but it's a scenario that is many people find emotionally consoling. And there's another aspect here is that reason and belief are not easily separated from emotion. I mean, our rational lives are deeply entangled with our emotional lives, and we feel emotional responses to things we find to be unreasonable. I mean, I happen to think that doubt is on the continuum with disgust and other psychological rejection states. And so when we doubt a proposition, we are having an emotional response to it. And so I think we just have to be. I think there's an all-purpose corrective here, which is just intellectual honesty. I mean, if you cease to pretend to be certain about things you're not certain about, see where that gets you. See where that gets you in conversation with other human beings. I think it'll get you a profoundly ethical life. It'll certainly get you a profoundly non-deceptive life.
Which leads me to one other quick follow-up question. When you say being intellectually honest and admitting you don't know these things, you said there were 3 ways to look at religion. 1, that it's true. 2nd, that it's useful. And 3rd, that you're an atheist and that is a religion. But there's a 4th thing, and that could be that you're an agnostic. You don't know whether it's true or not.
Yeah, but I don't meet too many agnostics about Zeus. All these agnostics about the God of Abraham should also be agnostic about Zeus. I mean, that's the same scenario.
If the poorest, most molested people were, by and large, the jihadists and the engineers and the architects and the doctors, people who had a benefit of the good life, were disproportionately moderate, then this analysis of yours would make some sense. But we have someone like Ayman al-Zawahiri, right? A surgeon. He comes from one of the most respected families in Egypt. He's got doctors and judges and pharmacists as far as the eye can see. He is not an exception. He is not. If you correct for literacy in the Muslim world, support for suicide bombing goes up. I mean, this is the most radicalized people are not the people who, in particular, well, you can see this in microcosm when you actually look at the biographies of the 19 hijackers. These were all college educated. Many of them had PhDs. I mean, it's just not the religion really is separable as the most important variable. And what is actually right on the surface to be seen is that these people are telling us what is motivating them. The jihadis are talking all day long about the pleasures that await martyrs in paradise, the horrors of living in proximity with the infidels, the desecration of the Muslim holy sites by the proximity of infidel troops on the ground. I mean, this is, Osama bin Laden tells us what motivates him. He's telling us why he's not living in Paris and dating models with his inheritance. I mean, he is being quite articulate ad nauseum. And so to deny the role that religion is playing, I would never for a moment say that there are not poor, mistreated people driven to extremis and to extreme violence for reasons other than religion. Of course, that happens. But this is a separable component which we have rendered, by the terms of our discourse, by our emotional attachment to it, immune to criticism. It is taboo to say that the Quran is bogus as a document that describes the history of
Can we appreciate how uncomfortable that guy is that he's talking to? He's like, what do I say? He's like swallowing. He doesn't know what to do.
The evolution of our species as a document that makes really cogent prescriptions about how to live in the 21st century, as is the Bible. Almost entirely bogus if you're going to take it as a text to live by. It is taboo to say that. You could not possibly get elected in this country if you even openly doubted whether or not there was a creator God listening to the prayers of your constituents. I mean, this is the world we are living in, and it's
Sam, I have to say,
atheism is really a term we do not need. I mean, in the same way that we don't have a word for someone who's not an astrologer. You know, we don't have websites for non-astrologers. There are no groups for non-astrologers. Nobody wakes up in the morning feeling the need to remind himself that he's not an astrologer. The irony is that atheism is completely without content. It is not a philosophical position. And all religious people are atheists with respect to everyone else's religion. I mean, we're all atheists with respect to the thousands of dead gods who lie in that mass grave we call mythology. I mean, think of Thor and Isis and Zeus. You know, these were once gods in good standing among our ancestors. But more importantly, every Christian rejects the claims of Islam, just as I do. You know, Muslims claim that they have the perfect word of the creator of the universe. Why do they believe this? Because it says so in the book. Sorry, not good enough. So this term atheism really is misleading. We're talking about specific truth claims and their evidence, or lack thereof. The atheist is simply saying, as Carl Sagan did, that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If ever there were an antidote to dogmatism, this is it.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe below. That was Sam Harris, best comebacks. I'm coming back at you with more. Thank you very much.